Hi everyone, welcome to our session, How to Act on Meaningful Customer Insights to Engage and also to retain your customers. We live in a world today where consumers expect experiences that are relevant, natural, cohesive across all the multiple channels. And I believe it's a responsibility of the brands to understand how and when your consumers are engaging so that you can create that brilliant customer experiences. And of course, to do that, you have to rely on data, you have to rely on customer insights to that creation of exceptional experiences. My name is Magith Noohukhan. I'm the head evangelist at Braze, and I represent our company globally. Braze is a customer engagement platform, and we help brands like yours across the globe to create that meaningful experiences with our customers. And very excited to welcome Vuk Vuckovic, who is the head of CRM and Martech at Careem. Vuk, could you please say a few words about yourself and your role at Careem, please?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. At Careem, I focused on CRM, mostly operations, and marketing technology, making sure that our marketing tech stack enables us to actually communicate and grow customer base and be able to kind of provide the best customer experience. If you don't know about Careem, which
everybody should know,
is basically Careem is in Dubai, SuperApp. We have over 12 services. We have over 50 million customers across the region, and we're trying to simplify customer experience and provide best services that we can.
Yeah, fantastic. You mentioned SuperApp, so I would love to talk about customer onboarding journey. So let's start with that first, right? So the very first expectation that I have, whichever brand that I'm engaging with, right? I want to have a smoother customer onboarding journey. And there are plenty of data available. You can look it up. There are a few data that says more than 56% of the consumers, they uninstall their app within the first 7 days. And the reasons could be plenty. Probably could be poor onboarding journey from the very beginning when they sign up for the product or services. I want to ask you, how do you do that at Careem to make sure that you have a smoother onboarding process, and how do you make them to stick to your brand?
I would start first to say the essential thing is actually from the Martech side is how we enable data to give us information about the customers and what we're going to do with that data further on. When we talk about it, we need to understand, okay, what is the customer journey, how the customer enters the funnel, and then how can we move them through that journey. And throughout that, what data points can we collect to be able to kind of segment and engage the customer base. So if we talk about onboarding journey, it's essential to understand where the customer is coming from. If we talk about paid advertising, there are certain ads the customer engages with. As the customer is going into our funnel and signs up, we already know where is it coming from, what type of ads it, so we can kind of, in the onboarding journey, communicate the right message to that specific customer. What is unique about Careem is that here we talk about SuperApp and multi-services. So it's essential to, during that onboarding journey, to understand when do we communicate different type of services and how we engage the customer to actually convert.
Yeah, fantastic. Vuk, you mentioned a couple of times data, right? And we are actually living in the era of zero and first-party data, right? So again, when you think of customer onboarding journey, brands should try and figure out how can you gather the zero-party data, right? And the zero-party data is 100% trustworthy because this is coming directly from your consumers, right? So understand what their preferences are, and you can use that as a way to engage with your consumers in a meaningful way from the very beginning of the journey. And I loved the fact that you mentioned customer onboarding journey. And when I talk to a lot of brands across the globe, oftentimes they mention customer onboarding as a project and not a journey. It's always a journey because it's the journey that you go through as a brand with your customers. So I'm sure that you have faced a few challenges when it comes to customer onboarding as well. So if you could share with the audience today, what are a few of the challenges that you could encounter?
Yes, sure. So I would say overall, whatever I worked in from the CRM perspective, the biggest thing comes from, I believe we covered it before, it's about the data and how different systems communicate with each other. Ensuring that you have a strong data perspective, enabling data to actually kind of be ingested, it's essential. So when we talk about, once you solve that point, during the onboarding journey is what type of channels do we use? For example, in some cases, we assume that certain channels are not really engaging enough.
Yeah.
What we try to do from Careem's side is essentially to experiment as much as possible. Basically, we run the experiment for a certain amount of time, understand how customer behaves, and tracking all this through statistical measures like what is the significance level? Does this mean that in the future, if we actually do this, it's going to be repeatable or not? So that's the key point. And then the other challenges we also faced is when do we communicate? What is the time span?
Yeah.
What is the actual frequency cap? How do we not overflood the customer with different type of communication? Also understanding what is the preferred channel to the customer is something that was shown useful.
Perfect. You mentioned 2 points which I would love to dig deeper a little bit, which is one is cross-channel and also experimentation. We will go to that a little later, but let's focus a little bit on the retention piece, right? So when I look at the data, there are a few proven retention strategies that works for almost every brand. Could be, starting with proper customer onboarding journey, cross-channel outreach. One other most important aspect is asking your consumers for feedback, and based on that, you can create that relevant experiences for that individual consumer. And also, of course, personalization. So when it comes to retention, we live in a competitive world where consumers have multiple options to choose from, right, including your competitors. So in a world of so much competition, so much options to choose from, retention is really key. So how do you do that, and how do you do that well at Careem?
Yeah. I think here what is essential is you're communicating to a person, you're communicating to a customer, and each other it's different individually, right? Now, how you create that path behind that customer is by understanding behavior over time, engagement with different type of services, and also what are the preferences to those customers. Now, what we do with that available data, we have certain type of models that we segment our customers. Different teams, of course, work on that, but we going from some simplified models. Basically, we started with the recency or frequency, understanding how customer is transacting. Then you can add additional monetary value to that. That's a classic RFM model. Or we go into some more advanced segmentational models. For example, we build a prediction model to understand what is the next best service to a customer based on like propensity scoring. And this helps us to kind of preemptively say, okay, this is where the customer might be interested in, and then you can engage it to that specific service or channel.
Yeah. The predictive models that you talked about, right? And we live in the world of machine learning where you could predict when a customer is likely to churn. And also you mentioned one really key thing, which is you are communicating with human, right? So imagine after a long day of business travel, right? You check in to your hotel, and at 4 in the morning, you receive a push notification which asks you, are you having fun staying at our hotel? Well, I was, but not anymore. Right? That's the kind of interaction few brands have with their consumers, not understanding when to communicate and which channels to use, and that kind of creates that broken customer experiences. Now, you mentioned experimentation in the beginning, right? So oftentimes, successful brands, they have developed this mindset and culture inside their company to regularly test and experiment. And the beautiful thing about that is they do that even when their campaigns are successful, right? They are not stopping it because their campaign was very much a success, but they keep on driving that initiative, right? So how do you enable experimentation and testing at Careem?
Yeah, I think, so usually we talk about here either A/B testing or multivariate testing, changing different aspects of something the customer will see. But I think within our aspect of engagement, of course, different teams work on it, but we have essentially the same experimentation methodology. So we talk about experiment design and it's a follow-up document that you establish across different services, right, and across different teams. Basically, what you're trying to do is to standardize the process so you can kind of compare in the future. And the process looks like you need to build hypothesis. Okay, what is the thing that I'm trying to influence, and how's that compared to the, to base? Once we describe that point, then we describe, okay, what is the primary metric that we're going to influence? Usually resolves around one metric. And then what is the qualitative metric following that primary metric? Basically, you want to make sure that you are influencing one thing, and then you have a quality metrics making sure that there is nothing additionally negatively happening. And once we go into the process, we have set amount of time, and then we follow up on that metric. What we need to understand is, for example, what type of conversions are we achieving? Is it big enough versus the base to say that this is successful? And to kind of understand that, we run some simpler like statistical models, and this tells us, okay, this is the confidence level that tells us that this is repeatable.
Yeah, what is that one primary metric that you are trying to influence, and also having a tool and technology in place that would allow you to do experimentation and testing in a much more efficient and a faster way, like replicating tests, for example, right? And that will help brands. So now, moving on to cross-channel customer engagement. So I have been reading a customer engagement review that we have published this year, and when you dive through it, the surprising fact is oftentimes many brands out there, they use just a single channel to engage with their consumers. Well, let me rephrase. Many brands don't engage with their consumers at all. That's the true reality today, right? But when they engage, they try and use single channel as a way to communicate, not engage, let's say communicate with their consumers. But when we compare the results between single channel and multi-channel, of course, the results are going to be like 2 times better. Starting from, let that be a purchase rate, let that be driving engagement, it's much more higher. And you need cross-channel customer engagement for a better outreach to create connected, cohesive customer experiences. Because think about it, the first thing that you do every morning probably is that take your mobile phone, right? And probably engage with the brands that you engage on a regular basis, and then 2 hours later you are opening up your laptop, right? In between you are checking something on your smartwatch and then tablet probably, right? So you have been jumping between one devices to another, but as a marketer, how often do you think about your consumers, right? And they are doing the exact same thing too. So you need to create that connected, cohesive experiences across multiple channels. So Careem, cross-channel connected customer experiences, how do you do that, and how do you do that well?
So from the channel perspective, first thing we need to understand basically what is the value and the reach of a specific channel within our customer base, as well what is the cost. No doubt, one of the best channels to reach customer, especially here, is SMS, but that's, of course, we know highly costly. So what we're trying to do is prioritize the channels based on their engagement. So for example, you also at the same time, you need to understand what's the purpose of each channel. So for example, if you talk about push is the communication channel that lets you short, quick information that you can act upon. It can be either promotional code or news or something. When you talk about email is a channel that I call like always on, which means you can always come back to that and reiterate. It can take more content. So that serves like as an additional information that can be passed on. We also use in-app channels. Those are more engaged during the customer journey. So if you are doing something and you're on the decision-making point, we can influence that through the in-app channels.
Yeah, it really depends on the demographics, the channels, purposes changes as well, right? I mean, you mentioned SMS being heavy here, and I was chatting with a few of our customers in the APAC region, and of course, they like their brands to engage with them on a regular basis. In one meeting, I was sitting with a prospect, and I asked them, how many emails do you send on a daily basis, right? And the answer was like 5 emails every day. And I asked them, why do you send 5 emails to your customers? And the answer was that because our competitors do, right? But do you have any insights about, if your consumers are engaging with your email at all? The answer is no. And the frequency of those emails and whatever messages that you send through different channels can vary as well. For example, in few countries in APAC, if you do not receive a message from a brand that you are engaging with on a daily basis, they think your brand is dead. Right? They even think that you are like probably running into bankruptcy. That's why you're not engaging with them. So understanding the demography and understanding how your consumers are engaging and which channels that they are using is also really, really key. And I see time is up. We talked about cross-channel customer engagement. We talked about retention. We talked about experimentation and testing, customer onboarding journey. One last question to wrap up the session. If you could offer one tip or advice to the audience who's just getting started with customer engagement, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's probably the most boring of all. Just the key thing is get your data straight, data pipelines, which basically means if you are to make any sound decision, you will not be able to do without it. Yeah. So making sure the system is ready for any type of scale.
Get the data ready, get the system ready. Really thank you for taking your time to join us today, Vuk, and thank you for being our wonderful customer. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us as well. Come and say hi. We have a booth outside Braze together with our partner Careem. Even if you just don't want to say hi, at least come for a coffee. There is free coffee out there. Thanks very much and have a wonderful day.
There you go. That's Magith and Vuk. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, thank you.